And moving on to our next story, which features Satish Ram! Oh my god! Hi! Jesus Christ, everybody. So, if some of you guys might only be Keikaku Korner listeners, so you don't know the glory of Satish Ram. So, Satish Ram and I have worked together. We actually started Those Guys Play and Those Guys on the Radio nearly 5 years ago at this point. It's been that long. Dear God. Yeah, no, it's been 4 to 5 years at this point. Technically it's leaning more towards 4, but dear God. So, it's really nice to have you on. As you guys know, Tristan Walter is digging for dinosaur bones on the moon. Again, I mention it every time just in case someone doesn't know if they're just tuning in for the first time. Because we have these, as you know, Satish, we have these located on our Those Guys on the Radio channel, video-wise. And then the audio, you can get that over at our Patreon, patreon.com/GGProductions. You can get the whole episode there. Anyway, also, as I'm recording you, it says that I have a warning high encoding error. So we might just take a still image of you at some points and just have that as the image. For you. It's just really funny. As long as we have the audio is really what I care about. Anyway, so today we're going to be talking about the PlayStation 1 Classic. There was news of a PlayStation 1 Classic. If you guys don't know about it, I actually did a deep dive on that over at Matt Rants over at our Those Guys Play YouTube channel. But I know Satish loves the PlayStation 1, so I really wanted to talk to you about this because that was your first system, if I remember correctly, right?
The Game Boy Color was technically my first ever experience with gaming, but the PlayStation 1 and it was PlayStation 1 late into gaming was my first actual console in terms of what they had at the time, and it was because my mom's best friend actually, her son was getting the PlayStation 2. I've mentioned this before to you. I don't know if I mentioned it on air or anything like that.
You may have, but either way, not on Keikaku Corner. So please go on.
Yeah, so basically, it's a long story short. It's just my mom's best friend's son was like, "Hey, getting a PS2. This guy seems like he's not a piece of shit. Here, go have fun." So I got the PlayStation 1, and I got all the games he had with it at the time. So gaming, my intro to gaming in that way was a little bit delayed because I had missed out on things. People commonly talk about the Genesis, the Saturn, N64. Now, I had played an N64, but I didn't own one.
Right, but so the reason... Yes, sorry to interrupt. The reason why I want you to bring this up, though, is because there are people out there who are not even super duper young, but are nostalgic for the PlayStation 1 in the same way that I am for the Super Nintendo, and others who are a bit older than us are for the NES. Because I have heard some people say, I don't know if there's that much nostalgia for the PS1, and it's like, it just depends on how old you are and what your experiences were. So I wanted I just really wanted to get your story, because I don't know that many people coming on who actually say, oh, my first was the PlayStation. Although, I think Tristan Walter actually has a similar experience, to be fair. But please go on.
Well, yeah, it's as simple as that. And then so I got an introduction to some PS1 games, and my love for gaming, I would say, stemmed from games like Crash Bandicoot, Spyro, Mega Man, the Mega Man X series, rather, Final Fantasy, Tekken.
And it's so funny because you're such a huge Nintendo fanboy as well now. I mean, your love for the Pokemon franchise and a bunch of others, but it's all usually handheld based, and that's what's interesting because as far as I know, you haven't owned a Nintendo console, like an actual console. Because you don't have the Switch.
No, the handhelds I have because of the Pokemon stuff, but you're correct. I never owned a GameCube, a Wii, a Switch, anything like that. So I've been, probably because of my start on Sony, in terms of the console, that's what happened. So I went from PS1 to PS2 late. I got the PS3 relatively close to release date. And then the PS4, I actually got it as a group gift that you were aware of.
Oh, shit, I was a part of it!
Yeah, my PlayStation 4 was essentially crowdfunded by my friends. And so...
It's actually called Matreon. It's called Mat Starter. No, I didn't start the... It's called Friend Starter. Your friends get together and they pull in some money.
Do that.
Yeah.
But it worked out. So I have the Destiny PS4, the limited edition white one from a couple years back, and that was because of a collective effort from you guys.
Yeah.
And even that was late into PS4, but I've basically been across Sony consoles for as long as I've played games.
Exactly.
And so a lot of the Sony PlayStation exclusives, starting with things like Crash and Spyro, were a big love for me.
So this means a lot to you, and this means a lot to me, based on the fact that even though I started off with Super Nintendo, when it came to my dad really loved PlayStation. He loved PC, but then he also enjoyed PlayStation. I assume the graphics were, I guess, maybe in his mind, a bit similar compared to something like the Super Nintendo to PC at the time. So he enjoyed playing some games on the PC and PS1, and then he essentially shared my love because he ended up getting, shared his love for that with me because he ended up getting Brain, come on. Oh, PlayStation Demos, like the PlayStation Magazine. So then we started getting demo discs every month. Some of you guys who've watched my Those Guys Play channel, our Those Guys Play channel, know that I've actually played Matt Plays PS1 demo discs. I've done that show there because I'm literally sitting on a ton of old demo discs that are really a big part of me as a gamer. Because when I was a kid, you know, back in the day, it's like you can't just spend, you know, all that money on every single game. So at some points, I just be like, let me go look at the me being like 8 at the time, or 5 to 8 at the time. I would just play demo discs all the time. That was how I experienced Crash 2 for the first time on a demo disc.
No, and I had a ton of those as well because what happened with me was, so based on timeline I gave you, people were getting the PS2 when I got the PS1, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we as a family were not doing super, but we picked up a lot of stuff at flea markets.
Yes.
And at the local flea market, there was like an older game stand. So what would happen is he had like used PlayStation 1 games because the PS2 was big, so nobody was really big into PS1 stuff.
Exactly.
Outside of the people who were like, you know, oh my god, I still want to play my PS1 games, or like people like me who just got the PS1 because they could afford it or got it as a gift now. So introduction to certain video games has also inspired my like for a lot of different things. Like I haven't done this one on air, but a baseball game in 2005 for PS2 was what taught me baseball. And anyone who knows me personally knows that baseball is like a huge thing for me. And then you go back to the PS1 and Know Your Role. SmackDown 2 Know Your Role was what got me into wrestling for a bit at the time because I wasn't allowed to stay up late or really watch wrestling.
Same.
But
yeah.
I got Know Your Role, and Know Your Role made me care about wrestling.
I not only
was fun.
I not only had WWF SmackDown Know Your Role, although I had the second one, but not only that, I had Warzone, Raw Warzone, which was Stone Cold was on the cover, and they actually had FMV style video in there, so it would cut from, if you're gonna have a match with someone that night, there would be a FMV footage, so full motion video, so it would actually be Stone Cold or Mankind cutting a promo on you. So you'd have Mankind, like literally you're about to fight Mankind, and before you do, you just see a video come up of Mankind going, "So I hear that tonight you want to go up against me?" And I'm just like, what in the hell? Because I, as a kid, didn't even know these guys. Because I couldn't watch wrestling. So it was a lot of fun. Obviously, that game wouldn't be on the system. But before I ask you a few questions, though, I want to actually talk about the games that are going to be on the system. Because we have 5 games. There's going to be 20. But 5 have been released thus far. I do think they should have potentially went with more. Or they should have talked about the PlayStation Classic sooner. Only because we're nearing the end of September. This is coming out December 3rd. I think it's a bit hard to make people happy customers with their pre-orders and say that everyone that pre-ordered isn't someone who wants to scalp it later. You see what I mean? To announce that to only mention 5 games thus far out of 20. You should mention a few more, in my opinion. But
yeah, I would have been happy with at least half because I know we've got 20 coming out. I would have. I mean, look, and I'm being very upfront about the fact that I did pre-order this the day the news came out.
He did.
And it's heading over.
Yeah, it's heading over to me because we'll be unboxing it. We'll be taking a look at it in a few different ways. But the thing is, you have pre-ordered it, but there's a few things I want to mention before we even dive into that and why you did. Because looking at the 5 games, we have Final Fantasy VII, Jumping Flash, Ridge Racer Type 4, Tekken 3, and Wild Arms. Now, I did a deep dive, like I mentioned earlier, into this on Matt Rants, and I talked about how each and every one, I talked about their prices on eBay. I don't have that up right now, and it would take too long for us to talk about it now. But the reason why I mentioned that is, long story short, these, including a PlayStation 1 with controllers, if you're trying to buy one right now, including these games. By the way. What?
2 controllers, by the way,
are coming with the Classic. But if you were trying to buy a real one, PlayStation 1 with 2 controllers on eBay or maybe at a retro video game store, including some of these all 5 of these games, it would actually average around $100 already That's what's interesting. Now, Final Fantasy VII was on the cheaper end, but with a game like Jumping Flash, funnily enough, that game is actually, I don't know if there was a huge print run. I've never heard of the game before, but the game was actually going for, when I checked, around $50. I usually don't like talking about the prices of games on any videos of any kind, because not only do they fluctuate, but I don't want to raise the prices. I'm just trying to say that I looked at the sold. I didn't look at what it was going for, I looked at what it was sold at on eBay.
Right, but let's say roughly, even including shipping and things like that, just on the price of the system alone, the PlayStation Classic, we're already getting around money's worth.
Yes. Now, some would say, I know Melissa said this to me off camera, she was saying, but what if you don't want every game on this system that's already on the system? We don't even know what the games are yet. So the question is, why did Satish Ram, not only, because you could say he did it to help me out, which is why, thank you, Satish, but why would he buy this for $100? Because he bought it and it's being sent to me, but it's technically his. So so we have to be very delicate with it on camera, very, very delicate. And also, I have to eventually see him again to give it to him. But here's the thing, right? The reason why you bought it, and tell me if you agree to this or you disagree, you bought it because of the fact that you don't have a lot of your PS1 games anymore. Am I right?
Okay. I mean, there's a multitude of reasons why I got this. Let's cross out the fact I definitely did get this to help you out, of course. So be glad. That's why I shipped towards you. And the only two PS1 games I still currently have, and I do not physically own a PS1 console.
Yes.
Would be Spyro 2 because I have the original case, and WW2 SmackDown 2 Know Your Role. I have both of those.
Yes.
And I do not have any other PS1 games.
Right.
So
and you can play those.
Were to say go out and buy a PlayStation.
Yeah, that would probably be. Even if it's $10. Still, when I looked at the prices of what was that?
PS3.
Oh, yes.
I can play it on my PS3.
He has digital versions of some of the games on his PS3. You totally do. Yeah, and you can play PS1 games on your PS3. So we do acknowledge that does exist, that does happen. But you don't have Tekken 3 on your PS3, do you?
I do not, and funnily enough, Tekken 3 was actually the first Tekken I played. So that was one of the things when I played out of that original 5, right? I played Final Fantasy 7. I played Wild Arms, and I love Wild Arms. Wild Arms was, like, in my opinion, was completely underrated. I think over the years, it's become normally respected and rated.
It's a lot of money. No, I'm again, I don't want to say that it's crazy money.
Wild Arms is good. Wild Arms was a spectacular RPG.
I've never played it.
So I played Wild Arms, I played Final Fantasy, I played Ridge Racer, and Ridge Racer was okay for me, but I played it. And then Tekken 3. And Tekken 3 is a lot of memories for me because I distinctly, and my memory is bad for anyone who actually knows me or has heard me talk about this stuff. Yeah. I played a lot of Tekken 3, and in that one you have, like, Gon, the little dragon, and I know all the storylines. And that was pretty much, outside of, wrestling, that was the first fighting sim that I played.
Yeah, Tekken 2 was my first, but I really enjoyed Tekken 3, and I've never played Final Fantasy VII more than 5 minutes of it, but it's still a fun franchise. I'm not going to just, like, write off Final Fantasy VII. And Wild Arms, while I've never played it, I've heard great things about it. Now I know that you like it. So out of the 5 games already, literally 3 of them sold you, and those 3 separately would cost just those 3 alone would cost around the same price as the PS1 Classic itself, which is $100.
And there's some novelty and nostalgia for it. Obviously there's some nostalgia here for me.
Yeah.
And this is the one that hit me because I've seen the mini consoles. You have experience with the mini consoles.
I have the NES. I have the NES and the SNES Classic Edition. And another thing I would like to mention as well is that another thing that some people say, which I totally understand, Melissa, we were talking about her new gaming rig, which is awesome. We didn't talk about it on the show, so I don't know if I should be allowed. I'm just saying everything. I just filmed Melissa's Keikaku Korner stuff like the other day. So we were talking about her gaming rig, and hers is so good that she could probably emulate every PS1 game in the library. Ours are literal piles of poop. I type on poop, right? Like your computer, computer, I know it's in the shop right now, but even when it comes back, it's not good enough to emulate the PS1 library. Am I correct in saying that?
I can do PS1 library. I can't do anything forward from that.
Okay, because my computers, you know that mine can't. Okay, so you know that mine can't, and they're pretty bad. So that's the reason why, for someone like myself, and I think for a fair amount of people out there, when someone says, "Oh, you can emulate every PS1 game, bro, for like $1,000," it's just like, well. That's a lot of money for me, you know? And I think for a lot of people out there to try to get a really good gaming rig, you're not going to sit there and be like, yeah, I paid $100. And some people might go, oh, but the Raspberry Pi, bro. But at the same time, there's a lot of work that goes into maintaining and making a Raspberry Pi work versus having the iOS and everything set up, like just for you on a PS1 Classic. And assuming, another thing too that we should also mention, assuming that it's easy to hack, then you can put any game you want to on there, as long as there's space allocated to it. Now, Sony could screw you over and not put extra space and only have just enough for the 20 games. So maybe you have to replace games, which does sound like it sucks. But I know that for Satish, if you don't like the game, there's a good chance that Jumping Flash would be the first one that you'd replace with Crash Warped, if it's not on there.
I will admit, I'll be the first to admit, even though you already admitted it on the air, so I'll be the second to admit, that I have no idea what Jumping Flash is. So that did not influence my decision in any way.
Yeah.
But there are, I mean, if you sat me down and you said, Satish, you could have 20 games on this thing, even if you cut some space, let's say 18, right? Because some may vary in a little bit of size. Mm-hmm. Let's say you could have 18 games on this thing, and you could play your 18 favorite PS1 games, and it'll work for $100.
Yeah.
I'm good, man. And the thing, novelty and nostalgia. Nostalgia we talked about, but novelty, it looks like an old PlayStation. Like, I want that. I get.
It should be smaller.
It's 45% smaller, I think.
It should be a bit smaller. I'll admit.
You think I'm okay with it, because for me, look, I understand that you can emulate on a computer and you can get a Raspberry Pi and get it to do these things. I am capable of doing these things, but I want it to look like an old PlayStation. That's a memory that's important to me, so I want to have it physically.
Also, it takes time, too. That's the thing I think people aren't... Because you work, I'm not going to say where you work, but you work a 9-to-5 job, you work a lot. So for you, it would take hours to set up a Raspberry Pi your first time, and then you'd have to turn it on the right way, save it the right way. With, looking at the NES and SNES Classic Editions, even though those are obviously very easy, those are easy to emulate on any PC, I would argue, even from the 2000s. At the same time, the way Nintendo set up their, set the system up, it's just so easy to, to save your game right there. To even backtrack a little bit with the SNES Classic, you can do a rewind. So if you just died and you want to do a quick rewind like 30 seconds earlier, you can do it. So if you're in Punch-Out and you're about to get knocked out, and you get knocked out, you can just do a rewind. Mega Man X, I've done that before. When trying to capture footage for the Mega Man X review that we did on Those Guys Play. Right. So, yeah, that's another thing, too.
These are HDMI compatible. These are all,
There you go. No, you said the magic word. If my camera didn't have audio issues when I scream into it, I would do the Pee Wee Herman, because HDMI is the magic word. I don't know about your computer, damn it, your TV, Satish, but a lot of people's televisions don't even have AV ports anymore. It's HDMI or bust. Does yours have one?
No, I have two TVs in the home, but I have a Sony, one of the newer ones.
Yeah.
And I have a smaller one in my room. The smaller one in my room might have the AV port.
Oh yes, no, yours totally does. It's so old. Yours is CRT, isn't it?
Yeah, the old one in my room.
Yeah, yours has it clearly. But
the new Sony that's in the living room?
Yeah.
No, it just got HDMI ports.
And that's something, and some people would say, but then you should just get a FrameMeister. FrameMeisters, I don't know if you know this, Satish. A FrameMeister is a very super high quality converter box where you can take any of your games, like AV games, AV port, games with AV outports, and plug them in there. And there's some compatibility issues here and there, but mostly it's really, really good. It's amazing. They'll look super crisp. And all you have to do, Satish, is spend $400 for just one box. $400.
Or I could spend $100 and I'd be okay, right?
No, Satish. Exactly. That's what I'm saying.
I mean, I may not come off sounding like the most intelligent guy here, but it means a lot to me that it looks like the old PlayStation. And if it does what's promised, I'm okay with this. I'm very happy with it. I pre-ordered it on day one because all I wanted to do is look like the old PlayStation.
Yeah.
And play the games. And I'm certain that at least 10 out of those 20 games are games that I will enjoy because I can't imagine. I mean, I know that the controllers don't support DualShock, so we may not see something like Ape Escape on there, which is okay.
But here's something interesting. I want to mention two quick things. One, don't worry about you not sounding like the most intelligent guy. Don't worry about that. I would argue that a majority of people on Those Guys Play, if given a secret ballot, an anonymous ballot, would call me a dumbass. If they knew that I would never know, I think more people on those guys' play would be like, that asshole, rather than... So don't worry about that, Satish. But another thing I want to say, this is the most important thing. I recently reviewed, it's a Hyperkin product, I reviewed it on those guys' play. It's an NES to SNES... an SNES to SNES Classic adapter. What is it adapting? How does it work? It takes your original Super Nintendo controllers and you can plug it into this adapter and plug that into your Super Nintendo Classic Edition. So with my original controller that I got when I was 5 years old, I can play that on the SNES Classic. And it was only $10. So give it some time, and I believe that a company like Hyperkin or like Retrobit or some of these other older companies that are, they really work around retro more often than not, they'll probably create something that will allow you to potentially connect DualShock controllers in there. And even if the DualShock maybe doesn't work the way it's intended, it'll still be a thing where if a game says this is only DualShock compatible, maybe it'll work, right? Or potentially a company that, not a company, but people online that create hacks for these consoles all the time. Maybe they'll allow you to play DualShock games on the system and trick the system into thinking that you have a DualShock controller in there, just so that it's supported. Maybe you can't use, maybe it's a game that it only rumbles. That's it. It's not even like it used the analog sticks, really, but it rumbles, so that it's like, but we need DualShock, Either way, because I'm pretty sure there's some games like that on the PS1 library. Maybe they don't use the analog stick much, but it thinks, I have to rumble, so you need to put this in here, right? I assume there has to be at least a few games like that.
Right.
Again, they can, there's so much, when it comes to hacking communities and when it comes to companies trying to create retro products, there can easily be some kind of converter of some kind. Because we don't even know how their ports look yet, like the controller ports, we don't know how they're going to look for the PS1 Classic because I haven't seen them yet. I don't think I saw them, and in these pictures, I don't think they actually show them. They look like original ones, but I don't know what they're actually going to look like. I don't think that they're actually going to have. Yeah, they seem to be USB based. So
yeah, they look to be USB based.
Then they're probably super hackable,
which makes me laugh because they're not wireless. But I'm okay with that because it keeps them software.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, it's $100. So I think some people were saying that the $100 price point actually turned them off. I agree. But I think the reason why it's $100, and I hate to say this, I hate to be this guy, because I don't want to sound like I'm now, even though we seem like we've been propping up Sony, now I revealed, drop the bombshell, I dropped the mic. A lot of Sony's bigger properties that would have been on this, or would be on this, or might even be on this, they're now with other studios. So look at Crash Bandicoot and Spyro the Dragon. Sony has to pay Activision to put those on there. So, and also looking at Final Fantasy, or either pay them, or there has to be some kind of pay-sharing thing going on. Like every time one console is sold, they get a little bit of cash out of that. Because Activision owns the rights to those two franchises. Same thing with Final Fantasy VII. Not Activision, but of course Square Enix owns the rights to that. So, I can't really picture... I can't think off the top of my head of certain franchises that are Sony exclusive that Sony can reap all those profits from. Because you look at the NES and the SNES Classic Edition, most of those games that are on there are first-party games. They're your Marios. They're your Mario or Luigi or Mario Karts, Mario, whatever it is. If it's not Mario, it's Ice Climbers. Maybe you're going to Capcom for Mega Man, or you're going to Konami for Castlevania, or you're going to obviously Square Enix for the Final Fantasy games. But most of the time, most of those games that are loaded on there, 30 games or 21 games, they're Nintendo first-party games. So Nintendo goes, we have to give the profits to us. where Sony's like, shit, we have to license these from other companies. So Tomb Raider. Right, exactly. Tomb Raider, huge, that was Eidos, which was then bought out by Square Enix. So... can you think of any off the top of your head? I know you have a bad memory, but I can't think of any games off the top of my head that were on the PlayStation now that would be coming back to a PlayStation Classic that Sony can reap all of the rewards from. No, maybe like Legend of Dragoon.
Right, and that might actually be on there. That's
Yeah,
probably
probably.
a
That's
good
probably
bet.
their RPG. Yeah. If because any game that I think of, like even like something like Harvest Moon, that's Natsume. That's not Sony. Like, there's a bunch of companies that made great games. Don't get me wrong. PS1 library I think is filled with some great games, but they're not first party.
Correct. Absolutely. Sony was able to play a lot. And you think about all these games that go through over the years,
Yeah.
even the stuff now,
Hmm.
it's a lot of different developers who are putting this stuff together.
Yes, I think one that's a new first party game that would eventually. I hate to do this because this sounds terrible. In 30 years from now, on the PS4 Classic Edition, we would have the new Spider-Man game because that's first party. That's made by Insomniac Games, but Sony owns. Like, that's all Sony. That's all Papa
Right.
Sony. So that one they'd be able to reap the money from. Although of course that's working with Marvel, so there may be a little bit of money sharing there. Duh. But no, no.
Because that game, I'd say Marvel's getting benefits off that.
Of
So
course, of course. But I think it's a bit different than like something like Spyro and Crash that I'm sure now Sony's probably kicking themselves in the ass. Like, we wouldn't have to pay Activision for this shit because they created those games from the get-go.
right.
Yeah, so that's the thing. I can't think of, and obviously there are. I know like people are going to be in the comment section down below be like, there's actually a lot. I know that there are, but we can't think off the top of our heads how many games that Sony still owns the rights to. That
And
would
just
be
for
on the
the
PS4.
average,
Yeah.
you and a lot of the gaming community are relatively educated. Like, you can sit there and break things down. You can tell me what a Raspberry Pi might cost. You can tell me the
Yeah.
general idea of what these games might cost versus buying an old console, And that's okay. To someone like me who's not into it anymore, right?
Hmm.
If you just look at it on the surface, it's a new console, right? Or
Quote
even if you
unquote.
say gaming device, right?
Yeah.
So even not considering that, 20 games at $100 is $5 a pop.
Which
And so even
some
if
of
I like
those,
half of those games,
yeah,
I'm looking at $10 a pop,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And that's not including two controllers on the console. I'm
yeah.
okay with that. I
Oh
think
yeah.
it's an okay investment. If considering a new
Well,
game
wait,
these
hold on,
days,
hold on. People are gonna take you the wrong way. You mean investment like putting money into it? Because because you know what people do.
I,
People,
oh
yeah, you're
no,
not
no,
gonna
I'm
resell
keeping
it.
this for the rest of my life. I think
Yes, yes.
I
No,
am
because
actively trying to keep this for the rest of my life.
I know. I only here's why I laugh though. Because as you know, Satish, there are people that are like, I'm gonna buy this game for $60, and one day I'm gonna sell it for $800. Investment, and you're like, wait, that's not a lot of money to keep a game around for that long.
It's an investment in my happiness kind of
Yes,
thing.
exactly. No,
It-
it's a
I
life.
think it
Yeah.
makes sense that I
Mm-hmm.
can keep this for a long
Yeah.
time. It's not too heavy. $100 is $100. It's not cheap,
No,
but I
because
think it's something that I
yeah.
can justify buying for myself.
Also, because you might not know this, there are people that are already who have pre-ordered it and put it online. Even though
You got
legally, not legally, but like YouTube rules, you're not allowed to do that. Not YouTube, goddamn it, eBay rules. You're not allowed to do that on eBay because it has to be within 90 days. Like, I don't know if you know that. It has to be within 90 days of owning it or about to own it. And it's not 90 days yet, but people are already putting them on eBay for hundreds and hundreds of dollars. So crazy money because they pre-ordered it and they're like, I want to make my quick buck. That's why when you said investment, I was like,
But there's
people
still
are going to...
pre-orders available too.
Well, we don't know. We don't know, actually. We don't know if Sony's going to restock. They should, and they probably will.
Oh.
That's why it's a terrible investment. It's the same way people who bought NES Classics up the wazoo, and people bought
Right.
them and were like, I'm going to
Right.
sell them for $300 a pop. And some people did buy them for $300 a pop. And then other people, maybe they thought, I won't buy one at $300, but I'll give them an offer to buy it at $150, and then I'll resell it at $300 one day. And it's like, wait, but then why did you get it at $150? And then all of a sudden, everything ends. The dust settles. Nintendo says, we're releasing new NES Classic Editions. And these people are like, Nintendo ruined my investment. It's just like, but it was never a good investment. Money,
I can't
yeah.
play with that anymore. It's
No.
not a stable property to do that on.
No.
And honestly, I'm buying this to keep it.
Yeah,
I'm
I know,
buying
yeah.
this
You're not buying
and
these
that's-
to resell. And even if you were, I'm not, it's funny, I don't shit on resellers. I'm only shitting on people who scalp. Who are like, I bought a $60 NES Classic, and now I'm going to sell it for $300. That's a lot different than saying I'm going to sell it for $100. You know what I mean? You make a little bit more. You make a little skim off the surface. Okay, but $300. Come on. So that's the thing, right, dude? So to buy one for $100 and then I assume people have them online. I actually haven't seen any myself, but Anthony Toto and I were talking about how many people are putting these up online for crazy amounts, for like hundreds of dollars. And while the unit only costs 100, it's like, get out of town. Come on, right? Now here's the question though. Are you upset at the fact that there's no AC adapter? Because I think it's bullshit. even though it can, if you have one for your phone, or if you have one, like a, okay, there's the actual cord that does come with it, but the brick part of it that would be in your phone, or that you plug the USB into, that's not coming with the system. Does that piss you off as much as it pisses me off? Because I don't want to end this on a sour note, but that does seem like they're...
I think it pisses me off because it starts the trend of these little things that they've been doing, like not just Sony.
Yeah.
Like game companies have been doing. Like when I bought a couple of years ago, I'm going to say maybe a year or 2 years ago, I bought a new 3DS XL.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
yes.
It was like super amazing 3DS XL, the Pokemon Sun and Moon edition.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no charger in it.
Nope, because Nintendo assumes that you're probably buying a normal charger. You already have a system
or you already
and you're
have
upgrading.
a normal charger, you know?
Yeah.
And so I know what they're sitting here saying, like, hey, you probably already have an adapter.
And it's funny. I do.
I do have an adapter. I do. However, that's not cool.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like my adapter if I'm paying $100. I have to be fair. I'd like the complete package.
Yes, I don't even think of game companies. I actually think of Apple. Because if Sony says, don't worry, you can buy an AC adapter from us on the side for $10 to $30, I'd be like, oh, you can actually fuck off today. Like, I would be like, no, like, I would not be happy about that. Now, do I have, I have a bunch of bricks at home. Like, I have ones for the NES, SNES Classic Edition, and I have some other ones as well. I'm sure they will work. I'm sure they'd be compatible. I'm sure I can play this thing day one when it's sent from Amazon. Thank you, Satish. When it's sent to me from Amazon, I'm sure I can play it day one, but that's not the point. The point is, even though, yes, at $120, it probably would have been, no one would have wanted it. I will admit that. But
I agree. That's actually a big difference.
Yes. But still, though, it's still a problem. Now, as we're wrapping this up, though, I think that the console will pay for itself if it's moddable in any way. If it is. If it's moddable, I think...
If it's moddable in any way, I think it's more that, it's a bargain, honestly.
Completely, yeah.
But
yeah.
If it's not moddable, I really do think that the game selection is going to start a conversation.
Yeah, because...
we still have 15 games to be released in terms of what they are.
And I'd be worried, because here's why I'm worried, right? Your favorite Crash Bandicoot is Crash Bandicoot Warped. Mine is Crash Bandicoot 2.
And most likely the console would have Crash 1.
Or Crash 2, which I know it's nice for me, but I don't want you to be left out in the cold.
Right, and then you have another thing, like Spyro was a series of 3, and mine happens to be 2. And so that's a situation where, it's a back and forth. I would not die over, like, if they just put the original Spyro and original Crash on there.
Yeah.
Because I still think there's a lot of value in that for me.
Yeah.
Now, if it's moddable, like I said, complete bargain in my eyes. I understand the discussion about computers and Raspberry Pi, but if you told me $100 gets me 18 to 20 of my favorite PlayStation 1 games and 2 controllers, I'm sold, man. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But I'm really anticipating the game selection. I already like 3 of the games that are on there, so that helps me feel a bit positive about the whole scenario. And I do think that either DualShock support will be added in the way that you mentioned, or I feel good about it. Right?
Yeah, no, I think
blind.
If you can't, the thing too is another thing we should also mention is because of how large PlayStation 1 games are. Even if they put a lot more memory in there, or a lot more space in there, and then we do have it moddable, it probably won't be able. It's definitely not going to be able to hold every single PS1 game anyway. So if you can't play the DualShock library, there's still a bunch of games that aren't DualShock compatible that you could play. So to be fair, those still exist as well. Now, as we're wrapping things up, I also want to mention as well that if there is an issue with, like, if it isn't moddable, yes, I totally understand where people are coming from. But at the same time, too, we've been downplaying, we haven't really been focusing on the HDMI issues. Or not issues, but the positives, where they won't be upscaled necessarily, but that's something that I mentioned earlier, but I really, because of your television, but I really want to drive that home. It is such a cheap way to be able to play these games, especially if you can put any game on there, with HDMI, versus you having to buy, like, there's $10 upgrade boxes, but they're so cheap. I've talked about it before, like the AV to HDMI. It's so cheap. You might as well, and also, again, you're having to buy a new PS1 or something like that, right? So it really is such a good deal because of the fact that, and also it comes with HDMI as well. Now, frankly, if you had a Switch, I said this on the Matt Rants, I'd rather them not give me an HDMI, but give me the AC brick. Because one powers the fucking console, and the other one you probably have if you have anything at all, like a cable box, or you have you have a DVD player even.
Yeah, I have HDMIs lying around at this point more than I have an AC adapter. I'm being completely honest.
Yeah.
There are 5 HDMIs in my house, 2 of which are just laying around as backups.
Exactly. Anyway, guys, we're going to wrap this up, but we're not going to wrap this up in the comment section down below. If you're watching this on a YouTube channel, definitely comment down below. We'd love to hear what you have to say. Either you can talk to me or Satish. I'll have to get in contact with Satish to get him to reply, but either way, I'd love to hear anything you guys have to say in the comment section down below, especially the games that you might want on this system. So definitely want to hear what you guys have to say, and yeah, I'm hyped. I'm hyped.
Please don't at me about Jumping Flash. I have no idea what it is, and I will be Googling it promptly after this recording. Maybe it'll be the best game I've never heard of in my life.